this water talk that is about an hour. And we promise that we will finish by before the end of the hour, so before 2 o'clock. You'll return, so just after lunch. So I hope you have brought a cup of coffee and are relaxed and are able to take in new knowledge. We have a couple of principles that we run by. So once we run the webinar, the presentation by Sylvia, then if you have questions on the specific slide, whatever is specific, you raise your hand, and then we'll also open up your mic so that you can pose a question while Sylvia is talking. If it's like overall questions that you do have to the presentation, please wait until the chat. As you can see, Sylvia will be talking up to 30 minutes, depending on how many questions that you do have. And then we'll take it in the Q&A session with the overall questions that you might have. And then, as I said in the beginning, I promise that I will return you to your normal work before the end of the hour at 2 o'clock. So without further ado, I would like to present Sylvia for you. Sylvia holds a PhD in biomedical engineering. So she knows a lot about the regulatory background and also on the materials in terms of drinking water approvals, which she has been spending a long part of her working life on these issues. So Sylvia, if you will take it away from here. And then basically I should also say we are recording now. So if anybody of you do not want to be recorded, please opt out now. So Sylvia, the word is yours.
Hi everyone, and I hope everyone can hear me and see me. We have tested the technology, so it should work. But thank you for inviting me to talk about this topic of harmonized European requirements for products in contact with drinking water. I've been working in this area for many years, over 13 years now, and having harmonized requirements in this area has been a topic for over 20 years. And it is an area that created a lot of headache for big companies and industry because we have experienced that member states in the EU have drafted their own requirements and started to enforce those, which were not in line with each other. Some were more strict, some were less strict, and some were outright contradictory. And mutual recognition hasn't really been working so far in the EU for these approvals. So what we've seen is a big barrier to trade. If you want to sell the same product in Italy than in Germany, you didn't always have the option to do it because the requirements were so different, or the requirements are still so different. But today we are very close to having that situation changed and having harmonized requirements, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So what's the new approach? I will cover that, and also how close or how far actually we are from making that work. And then I will try to give a holistic overview of the requirements that will impact everyone and what are the challenges around these. The legal documents are out, they have been published, but there are a lot of open questions that I will talk about. Then not strictly related to the new harmonized EU requirements, but if we talk water and water quality and drinking water contamination, then I wouldn't want to close the session without talking about PFAS. That has been in the media everywhere, and how that interacts with future drinking water requirements, both in the US and here in Europe. And then we will open up for questions and opinions and dialogue. So please also bring your perspectives to that discussion. But let's start with the legal framework. So I have talked about the divergent requirements and the barriers to trade that we have today. And the reason for that was that the Drinking Water Directive before 2020 basically gave the mandate to each and every member state in the EU to draft their own requirements. And this all changed in 2020 when the recast of the Drinking Water Directive was published. We got a new article. You can see that. That's Article 11. That is about the minimum hygienic requirements for materials that come into contact with water. And here we got a promise from the Commission that they will take the lead on defining harmonized requirements and will implement those via implementing a delegated act. So we have waited a bit more than 3 years, but finally done early this year. These implementing acts and delegated acts were published, and that's the list that you see numbered from 1 to 6. The first 3 that you see there is about the starting substances that you're allowed to use in materials. And generally it is raw material manufacturers, so rubber, elastomer, plastic, composite manufacturers who work with this positive list. What it means in practice is that just like in Germany or in France today, there's a positive list of starting substances. And it will be managed by ECHA. ECHA is the European Chemical Agency. They will take the lead on this and will manage the positive list of starting substances for the whole of Europe. The central piece is the positive list, and then there are rules on how you need to test the actual substance to be accepted to this list, and then there are rules on how to include them, when you can include them, and also when they expire and when you have to remove them. The current big challenge around this is that we've been working with positive lists differently. So the positive list we had in Germany, or we still have in Germany and France, they haven't changed. If there were materials on it, they stayed there for a very long time. What will change now is that this will be condition. There will be a condition to renew these. So if someone is not renewing a substance in every 5 years, then those substances will be removed from the positive list, and thereby any product containing that positive list will lose compliance. So there are a lot of challenges, and the Commission is discussing this currently on how we overcome this, because the further down we go in the supply chain, the less we know about what substances are in the materials we use. So we, Grundfos, we use in a pump up to 30-40 different components that come into contact with water, and we do not have the chemical formulation of all of those. So if it's only the raw material manufacturer who would know that actually we will have a problem, and then it depends on how far we are in the supply chain to get that information. So that will be a challenge. But the other 3 that you see on the screen, we have rules now for how we test and accept materials. These will follow EN standard in all cases. We also have rules on the conformity assessment procedures on how you assess the finished product. There are also rules for who can assess these products. I think if you work with drinking water approvals, you are used to working with companies like Eurofins and RES and TZW, who were doing the testing, and also some of them were doing the certification. These testing and certification can only be done in the future by notified bodies, and there is a bit of challenge around that currently as well. I will talk more about that. And finally, the new thing is that once the new requirements in EU kick in, then there will also be mandatory marking requirements for the products. In terms of timeline, we had the finished legal text early this year, but they are not coming into force until the end of 2026. However, that doesn't mean that you need to have a new European certification after 26, because there is something called a transitional period. And that transitional period is up to each member state to define how they use that. What we know for certain is that from 2032, you have to have European, you have to comply to the new European requirements. But between 26, or I should say 27 and 32, it's up to each member state to decide if they want to use or accept their old scheme, or they want to switch to the new one. And at the moment, there is no clarity on that. Some countries, for example, I believe it's the Netherlands and Germany, they published a clear plan on what they want to do in this transition period, but other countries haven't published anything, so it's a bit of a black box on what's going to happen. Will the existing certifications live all the way up till 2032, or will they be phased out before? We do not have an answer to that today. But in terms of the requirements, so I mentioned three things from the regulatory overview, and product assessment will resemble the product assessment we have in Germany today. So there will be a positive list of starting substances that primarily goes for non-metallic materials. For metallic materials, we have a positive list of starting compositions, and that's already available. So that's step one, that you need to make sure that your materials live up to the positive list. If your material lives up to the positive list, then you can go to step two, which is material testing. And what we mean by material testing is basically doing the same that you've been doing in Germany. So if your products are approved according to the German system, there is not that big of a difference. If your products are approved according to the French or the UK system, so ACS or RAS, then there is quite a long way to go, because the product wasn't necessarily assessed according to any positive list, if we are talking UK, and the tests were also very different. In terms of tests, we are talking about measuring migration from relevant substances. We are talking about TOC, total organic carbon. We are talking about odor and flavor, color, turbidity, and we are also talking about EMG, which is the microbial growth test. So basically testing how attractive your product or the surface area is to bacteria. This is what we have in Germany today, so that's basically a copy-paste. And then additionally, what we see in Germany, what we will see in the new European system compared to Germany, is that there will be a mandatory screening test for unexpected substances. That is not currently done anywhere. And yes, we can say that test methods are there. They are in the legal text. There are EN standards for all these. However, there are open questions. So if I just think of the microbial growth test, there are 3 different methods in the standard. Which one can you use? Which one can you use for elastomers? Which one can you use for other type of materials? There is a lot of discussion around this. And the Commission also realized that the legal text is not sufficient to guide certification bodies on doing actual assessment. They will need to develop a guidance document that's not in place, and that's why it's important to realize that we are far from having clear requirements on what will be necessary and what kind of testing and what kind of assessment we need to do. Then a new part, or maybe not that new part, is that we will also have an audit In some areas, we already had that in Germany, depending on the risk category of the product, but it's not something that we had either in the UK or in France. So for those who only work with those two other approvals, that will be fairly new. Then it will be to the producer to issue a declaration of conformity, and what's also very new is that there will be product marking requirements. So you will have to put that logo that you see on the right to your product. Then, as I mentioned, how the transitional measures are going to work, that's a little bit unclear. Only 2 countries who have published clear plans for this. I can share the one from Germany as an example. It comes from FIGAVA, who made this overview, and I think FIGAVA is an institute or association. It's a German industry association who is doing really great work in the drinking water area. They are also leading the harmonization work for the industry in Europe, and they are also chairing this consortium called European Drinking Water. And they are also working very closely with the future notified bodies on defining the requirements. So I can only recommend to work with FIGAVA and also watch out for all the content that they create, because they are doing really great work in this area. But basically what this shows is that Germany allows for using the existing system all the way until 2032, as long as the product was certified before the end of 26. That's the general principle. If something didn't have valid proof of conformity before the end of 26, then you're not allowed to use the old system anymore. The complication here is that Germany will change its rules with regards to lead, because they are lowering the lead limit in their drinking water ordinance from 28. And there is an extra twist that if your product contains lead, so you have any of the brass components with fairly high lead content, then even though you should be able to use that until 2032, they will only allow you to use the old proof of conformity until 28 January. From there on, for lead containing products, you need to use the new system. I would expect that other countries will also allow their national system to be used as long as possible, because we see a lot of delays in the European system. What is this delay I'm talking about? This is another great overview from FIGAVA, and it gives a bit of an insight into how challenging the time frame is from today until the end of 26. So if we look at the orange bits, then for the system to work, a lot of things need to fall into place. What we need first and foremost is notified bodies. So notified bodies are these certification agencies and test laboratories. It could be Eurofins, it could be Kiva, it could be Carso if you're working in French market. They need to be notified to be able to do this. But before they can be notified, every member state has to decide who is the notifying authority. And that's not something that has been done, and there is a lot of discussion around this at EU level, that member states haven't decided who is going to do this work. So we have a member state, they have a Ministry of Environment, they also have a Ministry of Health, they might also have other authorities. They first and foremost need to decide who is the notifying authority, who can then notify the notified bodies. So we are in a bit of a delay with this. Then if they decided who is the notifying body, then these notifying bodies from the different member states have to come together and agree on harmonized notification requirements. That work hasn't even started, and we do not expect that it will start before the middle of 25 if we are realistic. And once they did that and they have agreed, then they can test labs and certification bodies can apply for accreditation under these new requirements. It takes about 12 to 18 months to do that, and then the whole process can start. However, if you look at the timeline, we do not have that much time until the end of 26, so we expect that there will be delays around this process. Then if you take a different perspective, and that's around material testing and material assessment and conformity assessment, the legal text is published, but it can be interpreted in many different ways. And the Commission finally realized that, yes, that's a problem. We can't do a harmonized certification if the requirements are not clear. So what they are currently working on is a guidance document. So the GD in the red, it stands for the guidance document. They are planning to have a final draft end of this year, but it's been single-handedly drafted by Germany, and hasn't really been aligned with the other member states, hasn't really been aligned with the lab. So we expect that will also take time. The plan is to have the drinking water expert group of the Commission approve this middle of next year, and then publish it during 26. But again, this is to illustrate that a lot of things need to fall into place before the system actually works. So we have the regulation to have a harmonized system, but the parts of it are not in place yet. Then I wanted to show you this because this is the list of future notified bodies. They formed a group, and they are advising on the guidance document currently. These are the members today. These are all certification bodies or test labs who want to be notified bodies in the future. And they are working or trying to work with the Commission on shaping these requirements. Unfortunately, their perspective also hasn't really been taken too much into consideration, but we hope that's going to change in the next couple of months. So from the Danish side, it's Eurofins from Galten, and also Technologisk Institute who expressed interest that they want to be part of it, and they are also actively working as part of this group of future notified bodies. So these are the companies you want to watch out for, because they are potentially the companies who will be helping the certification work after 27. So I have talked quite a lot about the state of play, because I also thought that it was important to get a shared understanding on where we are and what are the obstacles on the road. But let's also spend a couple of minutes on what are the new harmonized requirements once the Commission has overcome the implementation challenges. And the key message here is that since some of you might know the name Thomas Rapp from German UBA, almost single-handedly wrote the requirements. The requirements of the EU, we resemble that of Germany. So as I said, if your products already comply with the UBA requirements, then it's still a bit of extra work, but it's only a bit of extra work, and the risk of having to change materials is fairly low. If your products only comply with the ACS in France or VRAS in the UK, then it's a lot of work, and the risk of having to change materials is very high. So I will take Germany as a starting point and compare that to the new EU requirements, because there are a lot of common denominators. So both work with a positive list of starting substances. The positive list in Germany and the new positive list in Europe are not identical, but they are similar. The way they work with it is that we had in the past the 4MS initiative, that's the 4 member state initiative. It was Germany, the Netherlands, France and the UK who were part of it, and they tried to merge their positive list together, and that will be the starting point for the harmonized European positive list. But as I said, it will be managed differently. Just because something is on the positive list today doesn't mean it's going to stay there 5 years from now, because the whole process is changing, and ECHA, the European Chemical Agency, will take control of that list. But what's same in the German method and in the new EU approach is that they will apply a risk-based approach to materials. So depending on how big the surface area is, you have to do different levels of assessment and testing. So for very, very small surface areas, you might not need to comply with the positive list of starting substances, and you might not need to do certain tests. For the very big surface areas, you will need to do everything, and you will also have to have third-party audits. So that's what is meant by a risk-based approach. Then the material and component testing, that's also very similar. It will be based on EN standards, and the tests don't really change. As I also mentioned before, we are talking about checking the migration for relevant substances. That is based on the formulation assessment of the material. You would do TOC, total organic carbon. You would do odor and flavor test. You would do turbidity test, and you would do EMG, which is the microbial growth test. What's different compared to Germany is that we have this screening for unexpected substances. That's new, but it's something that we've seen in France before, so it's merging the two requirements a bit. And the other thing that's new is that in Germany currently you only test in non-chlorinated water. Under the new EU requirement, you will also have to test in chlorinated water. And there's a bit of risk in this, because we have seen from practice, and I also know from the industry association, EDW, that it could happen that a material passes a test in non-chlorinated water, and then some reaction happens in chlorinated water, and then we don't pass the test any longer. So there is a bit of a risk for non-compliance there. So that's about the testing. And what's important to mention is that in Germany you can't test the finished assembled product today. So especially for those manufacturers who produce valves and pumps and these assembled products that made of a lot of different materials, it's an option in France today to just test the finished product, put it together, put water into it, and then measure that water. You already can't do that in Germany today, and you will not be able to do that in the new system either. So it's material. It will be material and component testing. And then the last common denominator we have is that we need a declaration of conformity in Germany today, and we will also need that in the EU going forward. Then I think in a nutshell, that's what I wanted to share about how the EU requirements will look like. And to take a bit of a side track, I want to talk for a couple of minutes about PFAS. PFAS and forever chemicals in general have been in the press quite a lot the last 2 years. But how it connects with drinking water regulations. So what we see in the US is that they have ruled, the EPA made a ruling that the water utility companies will need to measure the amount of PFAS in drinking water. And they have introduced very low thresholds for what is acceptable. How it impacts the producers of materials and assembled products is that because there's this requirement on the drinking water quality, they have decided that they will incorporate this into the NSF 61, or I should say NSF 600 standard. You test your products according to that standard. And that will kick in from 28. So what we see in the US is that the thresholds for PFAS are being lowered close to zero. These are very low values, very low parts per trillion, and that we already know that will trickle down into drinking water approvals. The situation in Europe is a little bit different. Since we had the recast of the Drinking Water Directive that came into force in 21, we already have limits in the Drinking Water Directive for water quality on some PFAS parameters. However, this has not explicitly been mirrored into product regulation yet. And the reason why it hasn't gone that far is simply because there has been unclarity on how you measure this. And now the Drinking Water Expert Group of the Commission is working very actively with the topic of how we monitor PFAS, and also what are the test standards that could be used to measure it in a standardized way. And the expectation is that once there is clarity around that, it could be that we will see also strengthening requirements on the product side, and maybe updated thresholds for some PFAS related substances that we test our materials and products. It's not something that is in place in the near future, but that's the trend that we are seeing currently. And I think it's important to keep in mind, especially with all the media attention around PFAS and how it contaminates waters and drinking waters. So this is what I wanted to. Do I have more slides? No. This is what I wanted to share with you. It was a quick review on where we are from a regulatory perspective. What are the challenges? How the new system is going to look like. And I haven't seen if there are any questions in the chat, but maybe let's just open up for questions, or I don't know, Klaus, if you want to do that opening.
Yes, so I'll do so if you'll. I'm back in control. I like that. If we can kind of get ours on again. Is that working in your screen? It is. Good. So we have agreed just the principles for today, for those that also came in late, that we will share the slides. Sylvia has always already agreed to that. So that is beautiful. There's nothing that will be omitted. And the second thing is that we will also share the recording, which we asked for your approval for. And your questions will come in a little while. I'll just come with a few personal remarks, and that is that I feel a little bit like a dinosaur. At least I feel extremely enlightened. As I spoke with Sylvia before we went on here, is that if we look at it, then most of what you talked about came into place in 2020, and that was when I left Grundfos. So everything I know about drinking water approvals goes back in time, unfortunately. And I'm so happy that actually there is coming a European standard, because when I worked a lot in the European Heat Pump Association and the European Solar Thermal Institute, there at that time, we had issues for the smaller manufacturers to follow suit, that you had to go in each and every European country and to get these approvals right. I think this actually increases the competition and makes the entry barriers for the smaller manufacturers much smaller than it used to be once all of this comes into place. So you said something about, and I'll just go on with questions here of my own before we also ask if there will be any others. Please raise your hand if you have. Otherwise, I'll just I'll just go on in terms of questions for Sylvia. There is a question here by Henriette. Please go ahead.
Hi. Yeah. Thank you for a really nice presentation, Sylvia. Very, very enlightening. My question was, as you mentioned, Grundfos has a pump consisting of multiple parts, multiple materials. So what will the approach be? You say you'll be testing based on compound and specific parts. Will it be that if all your suppliers of parts are certified, then the total assembly is certified, or would you also go back and have to test the parts and compositions?
I think that's a very, very relevant question, Henriette, and that's one of those questions that is a little bit unclear. So there is this concept of a pre-product, and the ideal scenario for us would be that if all of our components are already certified, or all of the materials we use are already certified, we would wish that we don't have to do extra testing. The way it looks now is that it's actually a topic within this guidance document group on how that's going to be handled. The approach now is risk-based. So if you have a very large surface area in the pump, so say the pump housing probably has the biggest surface area, on that most likely you would still need to do additional testing, and that's also how it is in Germany today. But the reason why I can't give the exact details on this is because it's an open question within the guidance document group on are we allowed to use these pre-product certifications and then not having to do the testing again once we as downstream users are using it. We are hoping for a pragmatic solution on this, but that's a little bit up to Thomas Rapp and those who are working on that guidance document.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. That's gonna be interesting to see.
It seems like we have another question from Mads. If you would present yourself and also which company you're from. And we can't hear you.
I try again.
Yeah.
Hello, Sylvia, and thank you very much for a great presentation. I'm Mads Jørgensen from BWT Denmark, and of course we also work with a lot of products in contact with drinking water. My question to you is the timeline that you see now with the transition to January 1st, 2027. There are still a lot of unclear matters in this case, I would say. How realistic do you think it is that the timeline will stick, having seen other projects like this being postponed?
I'm gonna share my personal opinion on this, and I think there will be delays because I don't think it's realistic that we make it in time if the member states haven't even made a decision on who is the competent authority. There is a lot of alignment work afterwards on aligning the requirements across the member states, and that doesn't happen overnight. Then if let's say we have the scenario that okay, we have the first notified body 31st of December 26, that still doesn't mean that you have a single certified product on the market. That means that you can start certifying your products afterwards. But I don't think it's realistic that we will meet this timeline. Maybe magic happens, but as things look today, I would expect delays.
Okay. And I even see within the member states that there's kind of different interpretation of these things. I heard even some of my own colleagues from the south of Europe saying that, for instance, the EPD and LCA calculations are a Scandinavian phenomenon, even though it's a European thing. So I think there's also within the member states different interpretations of these kind of timelines. So yeah.
I can share that some member states were not aware even a week ago that they need to appoint a competent.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions then from Mads? Thank you for your question and the answer. Otherwise, I will go ahead with some of those that I prepared and thought of. If my first one goes, if there's something on the internal side in terms of some gates that you need to go through in terms of approving a new material for drinking water at Grundfos.
So when we work with materials, we are of course not the raw material producer. So it comes down to specifications and requirements that we push in our supply chain. And what we request today is compliance to the German requirement, because if we have that, then we are assuming only very little risk on being non-compliant with the EU requirements. So basically that's the main principle. Comply with UBA, and then the little gap we can fill later. In terms of also advice to other companies, is that you've seen from one of my slides that the example for Germany, how they plan this transition period. And it's critical that your current national certification is valid on December 31st, 26. Because if that's valid, then it's very likely you will be okay for the next 5 years as well. And that's also the approach we are taking, that we are prioritizing, making sure that our current approvals are valid. In case there will be not enough notifying bodies to work with this, that's a sensible way of kind of going forwards and prioritizing.
Ah, interesting. What about then, I know that's probably not your table, but you might know something, because changing materials might also affect the quality of the product. So before you kind of approve and say, now we're going to use this material, is that up to the individual segments, or are you doing anything central to this question?
It is generally up to the segments and the product lines on what they want to change. We always advise what you need to keep in mind. Of course, technical specifications, it's the product lines need to know. But for example, RES is not going away. I think that's an important thing to highlight, that they are not part of the EU. RES certifications will remain. So if they change something, they still need to consider RES. They still need to consider, if you're also selling in the US, they need to consider NSF 61 from a drinking water perspective. So the complexity is reduced, but it's not completely removed with this. And as I said, it's very much a specification towards the suppliers that we are working with, because ultimately we don't know what are the starting substances in a material. But even though there are no certification bodies today, it's possible to work with the suppliers of raw materials on, do you think you will comply with the new positive list? Because they have that knowledge, they can assess whether it's likely that they are going to be compliant or not compliant. So those steps is possible to take already. It just, there is no certification body or test house who can run the test according to the new requirements.
Okay. So, and I'm still looking out. If you have any questions in the chat, please also, my assistants here, coordinators, they will also help me to follow those. There is a question here from Alan. Please state your name and where you're from.
I'm not sure it's as much as a question as it's a comment. I'm Alan. I'm from the company Roltec, and we are working with the groundwater drilling and products for that. And as it is right now, just to comment on the questions on the questions on how we interpret the transition period in Denmark and according to DANVA. It's basically just as you have said it, up until the 21st of December 2026, you have the national demands you can use, and from the 1st of January in 27 and up until the 31st of December 32, you have the transition period, and up until 26, the 31st, all national demands is applicable. So you can use it up until there, and then you can apply for new. But one of the things that I think is not mentioned here is that you have also added one step more, and that's actually drilling for water, and everything going in contact with the drinking water in underground is also within the new directive from the EU. So it was just a comment.
Thank you for elaborating, Alan. Is there a question more here from Peter?
Yeah. Hi, Silvia. Peter Fischer from Kamstrup. I would like thank you for your presentation, and I would like you to, if you can elaborate a little bit on the testing in chlorinated water, because I don't think we have any of our components tested in that after that standard. And last time I heard from Eurofins, they were still discussing details for the test conditions. Do you know any recent news on that specific part?
No, Peter, I'm afraid I don't have more news on the specifics on kind of how far they are with. I'm aware that there are question marks also around this one, like around many other things. And the only thing I think I also shared that during the presentation is that we see a risk of some materials, being compliant in non-chlorinated water and then presenting issues in chlorinated. But the exact test procedure and how, in what condition those are being done, I don't have detailed information.
No, thank you.
So thank you for that, Peter. Anybody else who has a question? Otherwise, I'll move on also with what I've prepared before in terms of questions that I'm interested in, and hopefully some of you will also be. That is knowledge partners. I think you mentioned one, but I assume even Grundfos needs to cooperate with other knowledge partners in terms of making sure that you are compliant and also are thinking ahead. So will you just repeat that or elaborate on that?
So I can mention two here. One is that we work very close with some test labs. So if you're already working with the UBA compliance and testing, you might be working with Eurofins, you might be working with Kiva, you might be working with someone else. And they are generally, or some of them, are a very good source of information on how things are moving, what you can expect, what's the pace of travel, and what's changing that's likely to impact your product. So I can encourage you to have close collaboration with your existing test labs who are also on that list of being a future notified body, because they are in the talks with Thomas Rapp and the Commission. So I think that's one track. Another track is, I mentioned this organization called European Drinking Water, and it's a consortium. So it's an association of associations, and the association who drives that work is FIGAVA. I have referenced some of their slides in my presentation, and they are really doing an amazing work in this area. So I can only encourage you to become part of that. It's not open for companies, but if you have a national association or an industry association you're part of, encourage them to become part of European Drinking Water, because they are sharing a lot of valuable information on the state of play. You can also become member in the working group that works on the guidance documents. So you could see ahead that what are the topics being discussed. So some topics are this pre-products that that you already asked about, that is it enough if we certify materials, or do we need to do it again for the components in the finished product? Also how we sum up surfaces. So if you have a complex product and you have various EPDMs in it, do you need to add those up to arrive to the correct risk category for your product, or can you use them separately? There are a lot of questions like this, and all these discussions are going on between the future notified bodies, the Commission, and this organization, European Drinking Water, is there as an observer. So they get first-hand information. So I could only encourage you to through your national or industry associations, get in contact with them. They are a really good resource.
Okay. Thank you. So any other questions for Sylvia? Otherwise, I will end this Q&A session. And I'll just say that there seems to be a big interest for this topic, and we will repeat it at a future Water Talk. Alan, I will be calling you. Maybe that's something for you to elaborate on this, on the drilling side of things. It could be interesting to get that expressed.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. And from Rotec, and then I know we had two people from Technologisk Institute who asked also to join, but I don't think they are here as far as I could see. So we will also include them onwards, just for your information. Otherwise, we will run for just a little promotion here. Aquatech is coming up middle of March, the biggest water fair there is in the EU next year. So we do have 2 stands, and of course we have poster stands available for you. We are in Hall 1, so we will definitely get a lot of traffic here for you as an exhibitor. Then please write me or call me if you're interested. The next one is ACE, the biggest fair there is in the US within drinking water, which I thought was quite appropriate for today, with high focus on IoT. So that is definitely also a possibility for you, which I would like to mention. Otherwise, I promised that I would return you before the end of the hour. Again, Sylvia has asked that if you wish to, if you have a question or something, we are more than happy to answer an email, both of us, if we can, and put you in contact with other people, some of those notified bodies or some of the GTSs or whatever. I'm sure that Sylvia has a contact if you want to move that forward. Otherwise, I want to say thank you for today, to this Water Talk and Drinking Water Approval. And we will have another episode of this, I can hear and see from the interest. So thank you very much for today. And I hope you have a good remainder of the day. We will close by now. Sylvia, if you will stay around, then we'll just say thank you for today for the rest of the audience.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.